Hi guys, welcome back to Archangel RC. Today I'm going to be playing with the new DJI Osmo Action camera, which is supposed to be a competitor to the GoPro 7 Black, sporting much of the same features and a slightly leaner price tag. I do not have a GoPro 7 Black to compare directly, but I will make use of what I have at my disposal. Now, right off the bat, I can tell you that this thing feels very solid in the hand, and you know it is built to last, which includes being waterproof down to 11 meters out of the box. The menu is perhaps one of the most intuitive ones that I've dealt with. All you do is just swipe, 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 and swipe some more, and touch here and touch there, and you're all set. You do have to activate the camera with the DJI Mimo app before you can use it, which I found exceptionally weird as a concept. I mean, it is not a drone that can fly into an airport, and in case you don't have internet where you're at for some reason, you're screwed. But anyway, boring menus aside, a USB-C and a micro SD card slot are what complete the camera. Would be a good thing to note that the lens protector can be removed to make the camera fit in non-standard locations, like the plastic nose piece of a radio-controlled plane, in this case the Talon GT, and I will get back to that very soon. First though, I did want to test it on my electric scooter because so far I have been using the Eken H6S on it, which shockingly enough is an $80 camera with 4K stabilization, which is something none of the other Chinese brand cameras have, even those much more expensive than that. For the most part, that Eken 4K stabilization is a joke, but I found that it works exceptionally well placed on my scooter pointed at me. This is with the stabilization off, and this is with stabilization on. I think you can clearly see the difference in the shaking. With the stabilization on, the footage is actually usable, which is quite impressive at that price point. And then look at what the Osmo Action does. It is times better and smooths out a lot of the movement and shaking of the scooter, and there is a lot of that in this here country of mine. A lot of the streets, even in the capital, resemble a riverbed, potholes and whatnot all over. But the Osmo Action doesn't care, it just takes care of it, and the footage looks awesome, and it also behaves very good when facing forward, but sadly this is where the Eken H6S starts to lose ground even more. I'm quite happy with the results from this test because it does show that the stabilization is pretty impressive indeed, and I was quite pleasantly surprised to find out that it also stabilizes the roll of the camera. If you see here, when I lean the scooter to the side, the camera leans as well, but the image tries to stay level and you can actually see the headlight coming into view. If I hold it like this, the image will slowly catch up to the actual roll of the camera, but for instant rolls it keeps the image level as much as it can, which is absolutely awesome and could prove useful. I also tried it mounted on my helmet while riding my electric kick scooter, and head movements aside, very good results as well, and I really liked how it handled going from bright to dark areas. This ride was towards the later part of the day, and this street was actually pretty dark. Definitely does look a lot brighter on the camera, and the image is still good and the stabilization is still working quite well. Going from dark to bright is also handled well and quickly and makes for a nice viewing experience. Here is another example going over a very rough street with stabilization on, and then here is that same street with stabilization off. I think it quickly becomes apparent just how well the camera manages to stabilize the image. Only situation where the stabilization was really not doing that great was at night. I guess the scarce street lighting around here is not enough for the algorithm to adequately stabilize the grainy and noisy image, so it really is of no use in such conditions. My next order of business was to get some running shots, just to see how it will handle that, and oh boy was this a major surprise. I did not expect such stable footage, especially considering how much the camera shook and moved around. Now, I am not a fan of looking at myself run, especially when I can be flying planes, and this is why I actually got this camera, but we will get to that very soon, so bear with me. So this is what the footage looks like when walking or running with no stabilization on on and it is quite shaky, and keep in mind the selfie stick actually smooths this down a little bit and it is still unwatchable, although since I shot that at 1080p 240 frames per second it might be shaky, but that is only until you slow it down. And then it stops being shaky and gets pretty impressive how slow you can get it, and then the footage starts looking smooth, but it will take forever to watch. Go to 4K with stabilization on and all of a sudden it doesn't matter if you're running or walking, the image is, well, rock steady indeed. And that is available even at the 60 frames per second shooting mode. So you do have the ability to slow it down 2 times, although not as impressive as slowing it down 8 times from 240 frames per second. It is 4K and it is stabilized. This would also make it quite good for vlogging, I would assume, though I'm not really into that stuff, so not sure what the requirements are exactly. I even put the Tech 2nd generation wearable gimbal on the selfie stick and put the Osmo on it, and the results were actually worse than with the camera alone, which was quite surprising. I guess the additional rocking of the gimbal, because the selfie stick was not too solid at the end there, was messing up things more than helping smooth the image. But to get back to the high frames per second modes, I have a 240 frames per second mode on my Moto G7 smartphone, but it is only at 720p, so as you can probably guess, not the best looking image in terms of quality and resolution nowadays. Plus, it is a little dark, but I guess I can't expect more of a camera on a smartphone that costs less than the DJI Osmo Action itself. The Osmo though, at 1080p and 240 frames per second is pretty amazing. Just look at this helicopter spooling up. Very impressive, and the image quality is there. Again, not quite 4K, but you do get 240 frames per second to play with, which does have its advantages. But now I think it is time to put this camera on a plane and get it flying, and first on the takeoff line would be the Zocht Talon GT, as it does have a space for the camera in the nose and I was able to fit it with minimal modifications, and would be a good platform to see what the camera can do on its own, hard mounted on a plane. First thing that I noticed was the smooth looking takeoff. Very nice. And then the rest of the flight was pretty impressive, given that there is no gimbal to help the camera cope with all the shaking and jumping of the plane, as it was a bumpy day with lots of wind. The thing is, that roll stabilization is quite good, but it does follow the movement of the plane. It will not keep the horizon level when the plane banks or shakes around, but it does smooth out that movement, which makes for a much more enjoyable viewing experience. I mean, just compare this to some shots from the Runcam 3S taken during a previous flight, and you will see the difference with and without stabilization. Looking at the DVR recording on the ground from that flight shows how the plane behaved, and then what the DJI Osmo Action recorded. I'd say the stabilization does a very good job in this application. There were some clouds that day and I was able to fly around some, but at some point the flight turned into a range check for the R9mm receiver, so there isn't much cloud action here, though I was absolutely shocked by the smoothness of the video and the quality of the image. Combine the two and I was mesmerized looking at the footage in all its length, able to make out every detail, because when it doesn't shake and move around too much, it is easy to concentrate on the quality of the image. I mean, just compare that to some footage from my Firefly 8 SE from a week earlier, and I think you can obviously see the difference in the image quality between the two. As much as I try, I am finding it hard to see any noise in the darker parts of the DJI footage, especially on the clouds, but it is not so difficult to find that on the Firefly 8 SE footage. Not to say the Firefly is a bad camera, but it is 3 times cheaper and I still don't have the custom firmware on it, which supposedly improves that quite a lot. A few days later, I decided to mount the Osmo Action on the Tech Mini 3D Pro gimbal on my XUAV clouds and see how this will go. Considering the two stabilization will be working together, one of two things will happen. They will either help each other out, or the gimbal stabilization will be messing with the Osmos and the resulting footage will be useless. I would like to very quickly point out that the Feiyutech gimbals are absolutely awesome, even though the DJI Osmo is 50 grams heavier than any other camera I've had on this gimbal, and I did have to add another 45 grams of lead weights to the gimbal to balance it properly. It performed absolutely perfectly in flight with around 100 grams of extra weight on it. So Feiyu, job very well done, but please mates, bring those gimbals back. We desperately need good gimbals that can be mounted on planes with an adequate damping system. The wearable ones just don't cut it. Just in case somebody from Feiyu sees this video, please bring back those gimbals, or actually new and improved models would be preferable. But let's get back on track. Following a perfect takeoff, slowed down 8 times for your viewing pleasure, the plane was off to, well, you guessed it, chase some clouds. During the flight itself, I was only looking at the feed from the FPV camera, so had no idea what was going on with the gimbal/camera combination, or at least until the plane landed and I had a chance to review the footage, and oh bloody hell, what a result that yielded. I can say with absolute certainty that unlike on a selfie stick, in this situation the gimbal did help the camera, and the result was the smoothest video footage from a radio controlled plane that I've seen in my experience. Looked absolutely stunning, and like I said before, so smooth that you actually have time to notice the detail and the image quality when you don't have to look at a shaky video, and the image quality is really impressive. Like I already said, I don't have a GoPro 7 Black, but the image sensors supposedly are the same between the two cameras, so I would expect the same level of quality from the GoPro as well, and perhaps put on a gimbal could give the same results. But for me, this was seriously impressive and an absolute pleasure to look at. This was the first time ever that I actually sat down and watched through the full length of the video of such a flight, and I can honestly tell you that pretty much 100% of the footage is absolutely usable and perfect, whereas using a camera with no image stabilization on this plane and gimbal usually results in about 30 to 40% of usable material, and mostly when the plane is high up where the air is smooth. The lower altitude parts of the flight rarely are good for much. But this time, all was looking very good, and I actually chanced upon very nice clouds as well spreading over the mountain, and before the haters say anything, no, there were no piloted aircraft in the area or anywhere this side of the country for that matter. We always fly with the radio listening in on the air traffic control frequencies, so there was nobody there. More to the point, nobody ever flies around this area and close to the peak, and certainly not when rain clouds are forming, so you can rest assured nobody was threatened. But let's get back on track. You can clearly see for yourself the results this camera can give, and I was actually very eager to get it when they announced it, just for this specific purpose. I'm going to find other applications for it, but my main goal was to get one and use it like this, and oh damn is it standing up to my expectations and even going above and beyond them. For a period of time I was considering strapping a DJI Osmo Pocket to the Talon GT, and I assume it might give slightly better results on that plane because of the gimbal part of it, but the field of view is quite narrow, which kinda limits its use, so I never got around to buying one. The Osmo Action though didn't take long to convince myself, and I had a hunch the stabilization will be quite good, and to be honest, I do not regret this decision. Watched a video recently of somebody showing how the GoPro does better on a racing copter, but I really couldn't care less about that application as it is quite limited and will definitely not be what this camera will be used for the most. And as far as I've heard, in most other applications the stabilization of the Osmo Action is a bit better than that of the GoPro 7, but so I've heard. Have not had a chance to test this myself, but I'm exceptionally happy with the results I'm getting from what I intend to use it for the most, so expect a lot more cloud chasing videos of this smoothness and quality until I either break or lose the camera. Because let's face it, this is what usually happens with gear in this hobby. And before I wrap this up, one more bit of good news. For a limited time, by following the link below the video and using this coupon code on checkout, you can get the DJI Osmo Action for $320 compared to its regular price of $390. This is an awesome price for this camera. It is cheaper than the GoPro 7 Black even at regular price, and with a discount it gets down to GoPro 7 Silver price levels, which is a crazy good deal for what the camera has to offer. In addition, links for all items shown and used in this video can be found in the description below, and should you decide to buy literally anything via those links, you would be supporting this channel at no additional cost to you, and you will have my unending gratitude as this is my full-time job. Another way you can support me is Patreon. The link is also there, and I would like to really thank all the people who have supported me so far in any way and would continue to do so. If you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, please feel free to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to also hit that bell button so you can be notified when I upload a new video. Also consider following me on Facebook for more regular updates. Happy and safe cloud chasing, and I will see you in the next one.